Hello, welcome to instructional video number 1 for the process journal, Sticky Emotions. This exercise is called the Wanted and Unwanted Identities. Let's get started. So in this exercise, you're making two lists. I actually think these are in the reverse order of the book, so I apologize for that. But I always like to start with negative and end on the positive. So this in the book is on the right side, but you'll make a list of the words that you are afraid people might use to describe you. So these can be words or phrases. Not everything fits nicely into a single word. But think of the ways that people might describe you that would be painful or hurtful or angsty, unwanted ways of being seen. It doesn't matter if the words are actually true or untrue, or if you've actually ever heard anyone use these words to describe you. It's just the words that in your mind you think of that you don't want to be considered as descriptive of you. Words you may work hard not to be like. Words you may not work hard to not be like, but you still don't want to be like them. And they can be about internal traits like personality, temperament, character, values, or they can be about external traits like physical attributes and appearance, the different roles that you fulfill in life and how you fulfill those roles, skill sets that you have, anything related to those that would be an unwanted identity. And that will go on the list. In the book, it's on the right side, but here in the example, it's on the left side. So again, I apologize for that difference. Go ahead and pause the video now. And once you've made your list, start replay or hit play again to continue with the next part. The second list you're going to make is your wanted identities. So again, a word or a phrase that you want people to use to describe you, ways you hope to be seen. Again, they don't have to be true. It could be true or untrue. That's irrelevant. You may or may not have actually heard the words used to describe you. That's also irrelevant. But these are just the ways that you would hope people would see you, view you, describe you. And a word or a phrase, it can be internal or external traits. And make a list of those. Here, of course, again, on the book, it's the other side. And once you have finished that list, go ahead and pause the video, make your list. Once you've finished that list, then hit play and we'll get on with the next steps. So once you have your two lists, you're going to start marking your words. And the first thing is a dot or an X. So a dot means mostly me, and an X means not me. So when I say that, a dot, if you think of the old-timey scales that are balance driven, you may have a little bit or a lot of a certain trait, but still be more of something else. So I think I want you to look at the words as, is it more true of me, it gets a dot. If it's more untrue of me, it gets an X. And you'll just put those by the words. For the sake of time, I won't do every word for you. If you're torn and you're really struggling, like, well, I know I'm this or not this, but in my heart or in my gut, I want you to go with how you feel. So we started with the words we think other people would use, and now we're turning our attention to how do we see ourselves, and we do that from the gut heart level, not the cognitive level. And then sometimes people are torn between, well, at work I'm totally this, but nowhere else in my life. So if you've got something like that, you can put a dot and an X and a little note to explain where each applies. But as much as possible, I want you to really try to narrow it down to just one dot or one X. So go ahead and pause the video and mark your words accordingly. And when you've finished making sure every single word has either a dot or an X, then play the video again and we'll get on with the next step. So next thing we're going to do is look at if something is in transition or not. So this is just a little legend here. So think of the old math symbols of more than and less than. If you feel like you're in transition, becoming more like any one of the words on either list, then it would get an arrow to the right. And if you think you're in transition, becoming less like a word, either list, then it would get an arrow to the left. And the transition to becoming more or less like the word may be because you're intentionally trying to change, or it may be that you just are, as you think about it, like, wow, I didn't really notice, but now that I'm giving it some thought, I really have become more or less like this word. And that change should be over a span of time, not like, well, yesterday I was a lot like this, but today I'm not at all. It needs to be over several months that you can know there's a notable change in how much you are becoming more or less like that word. So again, pause the video and see if there's any words at all that get an arrow. There may not be many, there may be lots, there may not be any. But see if you're in transition in a notable way and mark it accordingly, and then restart the video for the next step. Okay, this is the hardest question, and in all the years I've been doing this, I still have not figured out a good way to ask the question. So I'm going to do my best here on the video, and feel free to hop on my website and shoot me an email if you're totally confused by this and you want more clarification. But we're going to start with the unwanted identities. So on this list, are there any words that you feel like, you know, I'm not so invested in not being that unwanted identity, but I much more don't want to be that word because of how others would judge me. So if again, back to the scale concept, your reason for not wanting to be the word has a lot more to do with what others expect you to be than how you really want to work to not be. So I think I said that backwards. So let me restate that. The scale would tip towards an imposed value if your desire to not be any one of those words is a great deal more about how others expect you to be, and a lot less, or expect you not to be, and a lot less about how you really don't want to be. And then on this list, the wanted identities, actually pause, make your marks. If there's any imposed values, it just gets a diagonal line like this through next to the word, and then come back for the next question. All right, so now we're looking at the wanted identities, and again, kind of identifying if there's any imposed values there. So we're going to flip that convoluted question from earlier and now think about, are there any of the words on the wanted identities that really you don't have a great deal of concern to be that word? Your desire to be that word, the scale would tip more towards what others expect you to be, how others expect you to be, and the word is less about how you really want to be. So if that's the case, then it would get that diagonal line next to it to identify it as an imposed value. So go ahead and pause the video and make those marks now. All right, the next one is going to be about pain points. So we're going to put a star next to those, or an asterisk. And you may also use an initial if you need to, because the pain is associated with maybe a specific person. So I want you to pick out one or two words from your unwanted identities list and identify with a star or an asterisk the one or two words that would be most painful to see yourself as, and most painful to be seen as by other people. And you might want to pick a specific person, like a spouse or a friend, a sibling, a parent, or you might want to think of people in general. Just make that choice based on what you think will serve you best, and where your pain comes from, in terms of from what people do you feel pain based on how you think they see you. So a star or an asterisk by the one or two words that would be most painful on your unwanted identities list to be seen as or described as, including how you see yourself. Pause the video and make those marks now. All right, and now we're going to the wanted identities. Same mark for pain, a star or an asterisk. And I want you to pick the 1 or 2 words that are most painful to not align with, to not be seen as, to not see yourself as. Again, painful to not see yourself as, painful as maybe a specific person or people in general, and that's up to you. And 1 or 2 words. Really, I mean, some people, if you pick 3 or 4 words, that's not the end of the world. I just want you to narrow it down and not put a star by every word, because they're all painful to not be seen as on your wanted identities list, or to be seen as if they're on your unwanted identities list. Get to see how this starts to be a tongue twister. But go ahead and pause the video, make those marks for which are the most painful for you now. Okay, now what I want you to do is just think about, look at your list, look at how each word is marked, how you see yourself, what's painful to be seen or not seen as, what feels imposed. And notice the ones that are imposed or are pain points, those kind of function as our hot buttons. If somebody criticizes us in a way that steps on those words, feeling seen as an unwanted identity or not seen as a wanted identity, we're probably going to get reactive the fastest with those words. To not be seen as who we want to be seen as is always painful and can always lead to reaction. But those imposed values and the pain point words are the fastest way to get kind of dysregulated, emotional, or reactive, especially in relationship to how we think others see us. Then there is some space on the opposing page. So here's the list page, and on the page preceding that to the left, at the bottom is just a journal reflection space. And what I want you to use that space for is to just notice what comes up when you look at these lists. And when I say what comes up, I'm talking about memories, emotions, thoughts, self-talk, anything, bodily sensations, just what comes up when you look at that list. And then in the book, if you flip the page, there are some action steps and descriptions of some things that you can do on the page directly after the 2 lists. And then there are some more journal prompts. And so there's a little more space. So I want you to think about more just kind of what's coming up and what you want to follow up on, what you think you want to do differently. And just use that space to make the exercise more personal and useful, and consider like forward momentum. How do I move forward to become more in alignment with my wanted identities? I hope this video has been helpful. Look for the next video, which is the daily intentions and reflections. And that's a short little instructional video, but super important step as a part of becoming in alignment with our wanted identities. So see you at the next time.